that, recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I thank witnesses for appearing today. It has been said, and I will say it again, it is better to build a strong child than to repair a broken adult. Now, for those who deal in the social sciences, the psychologists, psychiatrists, the criminologists, paleontologists, just want you to know I don't necessarily like the language of a broken adult, but I need to communicate. So just allow me to communicate. I would be interested in knowing if you've seen any empirical evidence on the number of people who are incarcerated or were incarcerated who were homeless for some period of time in their lives. Anyone with anything that you can point me to, I'm sure that Google will help. But you may give me a head start if you have some empirical intelligence. Now, someone indicated that people move from one state to another because they find that in state A, they don't receive the resources that they can receive in state B. To what extent do you find this to be the case, where we have people who literally will hear, if you go over to state A, you'll get some help? Ms. Poppy, do you find that people will migrate based upon knowledge that they receive about these benefits from one state to another? Mr. Johnson, would you care to add something to this, please? I really would like to explore this more, but my time is limited, so I'll move on to something else. We've heard a good indication that one can be housed yet homeless, doubled up, as you have put it, living with a friend, and the intelligence that you accorded us with reference to how this impacts the formative years of very young children is very, very disturbing, which gets us to this notion of a need for a common definition, but a common vocabulary. Common vocabulary could be of great benefit across agencies, as I'm understanding your testimony today. I also understand, and I want you to help me with this, is a genuine appeal for assistance, that these definitions were promulgated because there was a need that they were trying to meet, so they arrived at a definition that would work for a given need, which developed these silos and definitions and stovepipes that did not function well across lines. How do we deal with the different needs that have to be met with a common definition? And I'm hopeful and believe that we're moving in the right direction. I just want to hear from the experts on the record as to how we get it done. So which of the experts would like to be first? Mr. Johnson. Yes, sir, Mr. Diamond. Ms. Poppy, would you care to respond? Thank you very much, Ms. Biggert. I'll wait if there's another round. I'll wait. Thank you.
Have something briefly?
Yes, ma'am. I'll make it very brief. Thank you. And I'd like to, if I may, Ms. Biggert, thank the staff. They just provide us an inordinate amount of intelligence, and it means a lot to have people to assist us to the extent that they do. Following up on what you said, ma'am, Ms. Is it Cackley?
Cackley, yes.
Yes. Do others agree that a common definition would yield greater intelligence on the length, breadth, width, depth of the problem? Is there anyone who differs?
Would the gentleman yield?
Of course,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, of course.
I might have put that, said it the wrong way. What we're looking for is that if a child is homeless under the definition education, then they should be considered homeless. It doesn't really put that definition into HUD. It doesn't expand it to adults.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me move to another area rather quickly, and this is in the area of veterans who are homeless, and they have children too, of course, and all children are important. No child should be elevated to some status higher than another. But I am curious, do we have, Ms. Poppy, any intelligence on the children of veterans? Thank you. And Madam Chair, I want to thank you again and alert the witnesses that the chair recently marked up a piece of legislation styled Homes for Heroes, and this piece of legislation would station a person in HUD whose sole responsibility it would be to monitor homelessness among our veterans, and there would be a report accorded Congress. So I want to thank you for allowing that legislation to receive a markup, and hopefully it will matriculate through Congress and get to the President's desk. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. The gentleman is very humble. It was his legislation that passed.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Bernanke, for appearing again. And I trust that this will not be your last visit. I believe that our country has benefited greatly from your service, and not just the service itself, but the way you have conducted yourself in a time of great turmoil. So I'm hopeful that you'll be back. I would like to, for just a moment, ask you to visit with us about the issue of certainty and uncertainty, confidence, optimism, because while you may do a lot of things, if consumer confidence or the producers don't have confidence, that can have a significant impact on long-term growth. Confidence is important to growth. And I read through your paper, by the way, and I'm very, very excited about some of the things that you've said, but I didn't get quite enough on the question of confidence. Would you please elaborate a bit? Well, I compliment you, and I'd like to focus on one aspect of what you said about working together. I contend that this is an important element in instilling confidence, and I believe that the American economy is quite resilient. It's strong, notwithstanding some of the weaknesses that have been exposed. And the reason I know it's strong is because it has survived Congress. If the economy can survive Congress, I'm confident that it'll thrive eventually. But things that we do, repealing continually or attempting to repeal some of the significant aspects of bills that have passed that will impact American people, I'm not sure how much confidence these things engender. More than 30, 40 attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, attempt to repeal Dodd-Frank without replacement, attempt to repeal the CFPB without a good sense of what the replacement would be. It seems to me that at some point, we in Congress have to do more to engender the confidence that will cause the American people to want to buy, to want to invest, to want to produce. And I think that Congress has a significant role it could play. And unfortunately, we have not been able to work together to the extent that the American people are confident that we will do things to help create jobs, to help build a broader economy. You have been very focused on jobs, very focused. We have not been as focused on jobs. The legislation that can produce jobs, much of it has lingered and has not had an opportunity to move forward. I just believe that in the final analysis, your good work, while it's going to be lauded and applauded, still needs some help from the policymakers in terms of working together to instill confidence. Confidence is needed. I think this economy is ready to blossom. But when I talk to business people, they say to me, we need confidence. We need to know that the rules are going to be static and not dynamic. Consumers say to me, I need confidence. I'll buy a house when I'm confident that the system is going to remain static and not dynamic. I thank you for your service, and I trust that we'll be able to help instill the confidence to augment and supplement the good work that you've done.
Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well, and I thank you, Mr. Cordray, for appearing today. I want to compliment you over here. I want to compliment you on your fine job that you're doing. Look forward to working with you. Do have a couple of concerns that I'd like to call to your attention.
Okay.
As the ranking member indicated, over our district work period, and I do emphasize work period, not break, there seems to be a misunderstanding about what we do. Over the district work...
I don't misunderstand it. I know how hard
thank
you work.
you.
Yeah.
Over the district work period, as she indicated, many of us decided that we would visit some of the community banks, smaller banks. I visited at least 3 of them, and upon visiting with them, I was amazed at some of the things that were presented to me. To be very honest with you, the term paperwork is a nebulous term until you have an opportunity to see what paperwork actually looks like from the point of view of a smaller bank, an institution that has one person possibly multitasking, doing more than one thing within the bank. All proper, of course. But after having this opportunity to visit with the smaller banks, many of whom keep loans on their portfolios, I am absolutely convinced, Mr. Cordray, that they need some help. And I'm going to work with the ranking member to do all that I can to provide them some assistance. But I just want to add my voice to her voice in letting you know that I believe that there sincerely really is a problem that needs our attention for the smaller community banks. So in the weeks, months to come, perhaps we'll talk to you more about it. I did ask that they provide proposed solutions. So at some point I'll start to get these proposed solutions in. I will visit with the ranking member before passing them on, but I hope that we will be able to help you with at least some thoughts as to how we might provide some degree of help for them. Now, moving to several things that have been called to my attention. The second appraisal for the smaller lenders, loans that are maintained on portfolios under $250,000. Yep. How are you proposing to address this concern that's been raised?
Just in case, we'd like to have you.
Thank you.
Share
Let me move forward to sophisticated borrowers and the counseling, homeownership counseling. Many of these persons have net worths that are fairly substantial. If you're a sophisticated borrower, has there been any thought given to how you will address these persons in their home ownership counseling requirements?
You're talking about unsophisticated borrowers, or?
Well, I'm talking about those who happen to be high net worth.
Oh,
persons.
I see.
Yes.
So high net worth borrowers?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Is there a requirement of counseling for a high net worth borrower?
I'm not familiar with that, but I'm happy to get back to you.
Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, the ranking member of the O&I subcommittee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by calling Lehman to our attention. As you know, this was the largest bankruptcy in American history, and its failure created a chain reaction that had a tremendous impact on the economic order. In 2011, the FDIC examined how Lehman could have been wound down under Dodd-Frank. And I believe the report concluded that it could have been done in such a way as to allow taxpayers to be off the hook and cause creditors as well as investors, shareholders, to share the burden of the cost. My question, Ms. Baer, to you is, could you please elaborate on how this could have been accomplished such that we would have preserved economic stability and avoided having taxpayers bear the burden of the cost? Thank you. Now a question for everyone. I'd like to ask a really difficult question, but you're all brilliant people, and this should be easy for you, given what you've accomplished in life and what you've studied. If you genuinely thought in your heart of hearts that the failure of a given entity would bring down the American economy as well as the world economy, if you genuinely thought that it would, and the only way to prevent it would be the utilization of tax dollars to be repaid, you genuinely believe that we may bring down the American economy if you do not respond, and tax dollars to be repaid is the only methodology by which you can prevent this, would you take the measure of using the method available to you, Mr. Fisher? I'm going to ask for a yes or no, given that time is of the essence.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the witness for testifying. And since the indication is that we're talking about people who are not red, black, or white, but they are green, I assume we're talking about me. I happen to be green, Al Green.
If the gentleman will yield.
Of course I will. I'll yield to my...
I wish it was more people like you that were green, not just in name, but that could afford all of this.
Well, thank you very much, and I have been blessed. I tell people all the time that I am better than I deserve to be. But let's talk about reality for just a moment, and I'd like to have you give some testimony today since you're here. So let's talk about why FHA finds itself in the position that it's in. FHA is not a for-profit business. Is this a fair statement?
That's correct.
And FHA was established more than 80 years ago. Would you state what the purpose of FHA was 80 years ago and what it is currently, please? And if those two are the same, please make note of it. As a matter of fact, when it was established, there was no contemplation that it would help any specific class, but probably when it was initially established, the beneficiaries were rarely, well, not to a great extent, African Americans or Latinos. Is that a fair statement in the infancy, the nascency of FHA?
Not having statistics, I would say that's probably a fair statement.
So FHA was not established to help African Americans or Latinos, but as time has evolved, FHA has been a benefit. And it did, after the Great Depression, a good thing. Well, I, like my colleagues, am of the opinion that FHA has served a meaningful purpose. It has done what it was designed to do. And I think that we need to continue this effort with FHA. So I'd like to ask you a question now about in-person servicing. FHA seeks to help persons who are having some difficulty with their mortgages. In-person servicing is an option. And the information that I read on this, the intelligence seems to indicate, to connote that you get greater results if you can perfect in-person servicing as opposed to doing it by way of email or some other form of servicing. We have a piece of legislation that would allow firms, businesses, to work with FHA to perform in-person servicing, to modify loans, to get engaged in short sales, to refinance. And my question to you is that something that we can talk to you about, this in-person servicing, so that maybe we can save even greater numbers of persons from having to go into foreclosure? Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, for 5 minutes.